Welcome to another episode of Bookbanter, and this time we're going to be talking about Stephen King's latest book, If It Bleeds. And since I'm talking about my favorite author this time, I thought I'd bring in some help. Chris Fletcher, who's here. Say hi, Chris.
Hi, how's it going?
You may remember Chris from such things as Jake Fisher of the Ostia Network.
That's right.
But he also happens to be a very big Stephen King fan like me.
I am. And I wonder if I should maybe show my my picture.
Oh, right, yeah. Do you have it handy or something?
I do have it in here.
You always have it handy?
I do, yeah. And I was 15. Should I grab it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah.
Go for it, yep.
Okay.
So you want to give a little intro on that photo?
Yeah, I should probably explain that I stalked him when I was 15.
And when was that, late 80s, was it?
That was, the summer of 1988. I was 15, mm-hmm. and he was, my favorite person in the world, probably. And so my mom was great at making things happen, like making dreams come true. And so she said, hey, what do you want to do this summer? And I was like, I'd like to meet Stephen King. She said, okay, we'll make that happen. And she did. She did make it happen. Yeah. So we were going to go on a trip anyway. And then, so we just kind of added a leg of the trip going to Bangor, Maine. And basically, kind of stalked him, hung out at his house in front of his house. And he came out one morning in his silver Mercedes, and we actually followed him around the block. And then my mom goes and knocks on his window and said, hey, your biggest fan is over there in the car. This was like right after Misery came out, so it's probably bad timing, But yeah, he was super, super nice. And he's like, oh, well, I guess I got to get a picture with him. And so super friendly, great guy.
And then we went to a Joe Hill signing. What was that?
Yes.
4 years ago?
A couple years, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you were able to recreate the same photo with Joe Hill.
Right. I brought that picture, and he's like, oh my God, this is awesome. Can I text it to my dad? So he took a picture of it and sent it to his dad. And he said, oh, we have to redo it. And he was like, oh, no, yep, you're on the wrong side. He was very particular about that. So that was pretty cool.
So I thought doing the Stephen King book, since Chris and I are big fans and everything, it'd be fun to do a little joint book banter thing. And it kind of calls back to, as I talked, I think in this first episode of Book Banter, how we originally were trying to make a book chat show between you and me about, do you remember that? That was originally going to be Book Banter way back when. I
forgot about that, but that's cool. It's a good idea. So
now we did it years ago. We were originally going to do it back and forth, and then we couldn't get each other's schedules to work out, so I just made it myself. This was, I think, 2009 or something like that. It was a long time ago.
Okay, yeah. Right.
But now we're getting to have it. If we had Zoom, then maybe we could have made it work. I guess that wasn't an option.
Right. Exactly.
So, If It Bleeds, which came out March, was it, I think? I think it came out in March.
I think so.
Yeah. So it's a collection of 4 novellas, which he's done a number of times. I'm trying to remember, he's done it, but Different Seasons was one, right?
Seasons, 4 Past Midnight.
Right.
1990.
And then he had a later one, too.
Yeah.
So he didn't do one between Different Seasons and 4 Past Midnight?
No, I don't think so. So Different Seasons was like 82, and then 4 Past Midnight was 90, I want to say.
I have a book list in here.
I used to know them all. Like, I could be like, Carrie Salem's out The Shining Mansion.
He had one that came out, it was like 4 books ago that was like that. Anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Did it have like the 1922 one or something?
Maybe, I can't remember what it is right now. But anyway, again, this is once again where I should do a little bit of research and I haven't done, so it makes us look bad. So with 4 novellas, we thought we'd each talk about 2 of them and give a little introduction and then have a little bit of a discussion. So the first one in this, first off, I don't know if you've noticed in the cover. So it's this cat, but then the nose is a rat.
Yes.
It's kind of cool. I think my kid noticed that. Owen noticed that first. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't see that.
Yeah. And the rat comes up. And
the rat does, but there's no cat, right?
I don't know.
I kept waiting for a cat, and no cat showed up. The rat shows up at the last story, but
right. It was a missing dog or something in the
No,
Holly,
the third story.
Holly
Yeah.
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so was I couldn't remember for sure. I'm going to do Life of Chuck and Rat.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And I'll talk
Okay.
about the first and the third. Yeah.
Okay.
So the first one is called Mr. Harrigan's Phone, which he set kind of in the earlier cell phone days when the iPhone 1 came out intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about a kid who helps out this older guy who's kind of a retired, millionaire, really rich guy who used to run a company.
Right.
He's like a ungrateful old conservative guy who kind of hates everyone and everything. But the kid helps him out with doing household stuff and reading to him, right? Yeah, he reads stories to him.
Right.
So he gets paid very minimally. And then as a gift, he doesn't have any technology or anything like that except the telephone. He's very Luddite in that way.
Right.
And then the kid gets him a iPhone 1 as a gift just to show him the world or the internet, basically, and everything you can do with a little phone like that. And more importantly, like check the stock prices and things like that. And at first he's very against it and then gives it a shot, and it kind of opens up the whole world to him. And then eventually the guy passes away because he's really old. And the kid is at the funeral and puts the phone in the coffin with him. And he gets buried with the phone. And then one day, the kid gets a text from him.
Yeah.
It felt very classic Stephen King for me. Like one of his, you could really see kind of where the idea came from and developed. And then he started going in interesting ways with it.
Yeah.
I felt like he could have done even more. Like, it felt like it could have been its own book in some ways. Like, he could have really developed a whole story. He jumps forward ahead in times a bit, the kid getting older and stuff, but he could have done a lot of different things with it. What did you think of the story?
I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was just the characters and the way, like the first paragraph, like I can't remember what it is. I don't have it in front of me, but I just liked how it started. It felt like classic Stephen King. I've read everything he's ever, like every book, every story he's ever written, and I would say I love his classic, the 70s, first part of the 80s, most of his stuff there. Some of the 90s stuff I didn't like as much, but then there were off and on throughout the years, like what was it, Atlantis, Hearts in Atlantis. Like, I felt that there were ones throughout the 90s and 2000s that I liked a lot.
And they weren't necessarily a classic horror story and just like a really good story.
Not necessarily, yeah. It just kind of had his classic voice. And I feel like some of his, like, I would say more of his more recent stuff I have not liked much.
Yeah, it's kind of hit and miss, yeah.
Yeah, right. And I'm not a big fan of the Mr. Mercedes series, and I know some people really like that, and he seems to really like it. He wouldn't have.
Because he was doing something different, maybe.
Yeah.
Because he really likes reading thrillers, because I know he talks a lot about and will recommend thriller writers on Twitter and stuff. So I think be able to write them.
Yeah, and so I felt there was something when I started reading that first story. I was like, hey, there's something here, that reminds me of why I liked Stephen King in the first place. Right. And it's not best story by any means, but it had some of that quality, I would say. And it's kind of, I would say all four stories in this book, we'll not get into the plots yet, but all four stories I feel are very kind of, we've been there, done that. Like, they're very reminiscent, similar to other, stories. We've got a later one I'm going to talk about that's kind of monkey's paw-y and stuff. And I feel they all kind of have that. But to the degree that he's able to kind of create a Stephen King atmosphere and character, I was totally happy to go along with that, And
I do think this book would, I enjoyed the book. I wasn't expecting to, because I didn't like his last couple as much. And I really thought it's a good kind of, like, if you want to try Stephen King and know what his entire kind of bibliography is like, the four stories kind of covers it pretty well.
Yeah, right.
And then this one just felt like a good classic, like, here's a seemingly normal thing, and then we're going to twist it around and make it a creepy little horror story. Right.
And he's always kind of got that, like, young kid and old man kind of, there's sort of like this innocence and
dynamic. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And, hiring him to read to him, and it just, these are stories.
Actually, now I realize it makes me think exactly of
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Well, that, but also that one he did they did a movie of it where it was the kid who was reading to the former Nazi. Remember that? It was played.
Oh yeah, apt pupil.
Apt pupil. There we go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Exactly.
Similar sort of dynamic.
So, the old kid and young kid and old man.
I wonder if it's changed at all with him as he's gotten older and is starting to be more on the old man side to the younger side.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think he. I think there's something about his imagination where he tends to go, and that's something and it felt like it wasn't. It was familiar, but it didn't feel like there was life in it. Is what I would say. Yeah. So,
and it felt like it could have even cut it down to a short story if he wanted, but I guess with what he wanted to put in there and the amount of characters and development he wanted to give each character required to be a novella. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's kind of how he does stuff. He doesn't actually tell himself he's going to do a short story or a book or whatever it is. He kind of, gets the idea, lets it percolate in his mind, and then just starts writing it. And it takes him as long as it takes him.
Right.
Yeah.
So solid start to the collection.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, and it's like, this is good. It's better than a lot of recent. And then the second story is called The Life of Chuck.
Yep.
And now it's been, I read this right when it came out, so it's a little, it's not quite
4 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. But I looked it over a little bit.
And as a teacher, you've gone through a lot of books since then, right? So
I have gone through a lot of books, and there's been some things going on in the world since then. Yeah.
Just a few.
We should talk about The Stand, I guess. Charles Krantz, I had to look it up again. Is the guy's name, Chuck?
Yeah.
Charles Krantz.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting story because it's got this Christopher Nolan kind of quality to it, where it starts in the end and then goes
works
backwards.
Right back. Yep.
Right. And
is it called Requiem? Was it Requiem?
Yeah, Memento.
Oh, Memento. Yeah,
all his things. Not that he invented that, but
no.
But I mean, whatever. So it's got that quality to it where it felt like he hadn't done that explicitly like that. Like he's always done that thing where he'll say, "Oh, he left the house and he didn't know," not knowing that in 45 minutes he only had 45 more minutes to live or something like that. He's always done that kind of jump scare kind of narration stuff since forever. But this, it felt like it was a little more deliberate that way. And the beginning was okay. We'll see how it goes. I ended up liking this story quite a bit, just because I thought. So I'll explain it. It's called Life of Chuck. It's about this man named Charles Krantz, who's 39 and he's dying. I believe it was cancer. Or something.
Cancer, yeah.
So he's in the hospital and it's not looking good for him. It's kind of like final days. And but in the first part of the story, there's three kind of
separate,
sub stories or chapters. And the first one, he's not even really a character in it. It's we know that he's dying in the hospital, and we have these other characters. There's a teacher, and he's divorced from his wife, and they're trying to get in touch. And all around him and around the world, there are all these signs that are popping up that just like billboards,
literal signs, billboards, posters, everywhere, every window.
Charles, and I wrote this down just so I could say it. But so it says Charles Krantz, 39 great years. Thanks, Chuck. Okay. And then it's like, that's weird. Someone, paid for a billboard or something.
And there was like a full page ad, I think, at the newspaper too.
Yeah, right.
Happy retirement or whatever. And
right. So it just starts showing up everywhere. And it's like, okay, what the heck's going on with that? And then a bunch of other kind of cataclysmic stuff starts happening. I think California starts, falling off into the ocean, like in Superman or something, and all these terrible things are happening, kind of like what it ended up happening after I read the book. It was like, wow, thanks, Chuck.
I read it what was it, like a month ago, so it was kind of the world I'm living in right now. Okay, great. Yes, it was kind of painful in that way.
Right. So, and I don't want to give away the plot on this exactly, but okay, so the first, there's a guy named Chuck, and then the second part of the story, we find out who Chuck is, and you kind of he becomes central and
more backstory of him.
Yeah, right. And it's going backwards, so he's like
earlier
midlife, and he's not dying at this point. But I believe he does do that little Stephen King, and this was a year before he found out.
Yeah, he always got those Stephen King lines there. Oh, everything's fine.
Right.
But then they never saw him again.
Yeah, exactly. And then so it does this kind of middle part, like in the, I guess, prime of his life, and then it goes back before that and has him as a child. And there's sort of this kind of possibly supernatural, ghostly element to it at the end. But I think I just talk in generalities about what I liked about this story. I felt that it really, it kind of hits this thing that we all think about at some time or other, that when you're growing up, you think about that you are only aware of the world through your own senses, through your own eyes, and like the world didn't exist before you were alive.
Right.
and that seems, that concept is more real to you, until you kind of grow up, and then you just say, okay, well, yeah, but the world actually was here before I was alive.
There was a lot more that's gone on, and
yeah, right. But you can never exactly prove it. It's sort of like, it's almost this weird thing where the scientific evidence you actually have to take on faith, because you haven't. I mean,
it's all written down in books, but you just have to take it.
But there's a little bit of a leap of, well, yeah, but maybe they just created all this stuff, So anyway,
the lunar landing was staged.
Yeah, right. And they did a really good job faking it. It looks really, really real. But and so it's kind of like, are you in Truman Show kind of thing? Like, how can you exactly prove that the whole world is not just inside of you? You can. I think therefore I am, and all. You get philosophical about how you could prove it, but this story kind of gets at that, and in an interesting way. Like, it doesn't get too preachy, but it's I just thought it was interesting, the concept, the conceit of this story, and it's sort of, in some ways, like, it really, I thought, could have tied into The Dark Tower, in the sense of how worlds exist
and everything's connected in some way,
right? And worlds can run down and die, and these kinds of things. And that, like, if a flower in a vacant lot dies, then the whole universe or world would die, And
also parallel dimensions and things like that too.
For sure, yeah. And so kind of like the death of, the sparrow, the providence of a sparrow, all this kind of stuff, like small things, kind of contain all of the universes inside.
It's definitely one of those stories that, because you've got to read kind of the whole thing to understand what's going on and how it all kind of fits together. But then the more you think about it, there's more levels and complexities to it. And
yeah. And, I thought he did a good job with kind of balancing just like good, interesting storytelling and just, making the reader want to keep reading and go like, what the heck is going on here?
And I think this is something he would have usually done as a short story with a particular device he was trying to use in that way. But because I think he made it a novella here, there was more meat to it, and the more you could kind of pick at and understand and put together, which made it better.
Yeah. So halfway through the book, I'm like, really okay, I'm liking them both. So, like, I'm going, wow, this book's really good so far. Right?
And then the third one is the longest novella of the collection, I think it is, and it's called "If It Bleeds," from the newspaper idea of the basically catchy, if there's blood, run it front page, juicy stories and all that. And he's pulling from the mystery series he did. What's the? I'm trying to remember the Mr. Mercedes.
Mr. Mercedes. I forget.
Finders Keepers and
End of Watch.
Yes. I'm trying what does the whole series, the trilogy, have a name? I can't remember what the trilogy is called.
The Bill Hodges.
Bill Hodges, yeah, that's right. Yeah, about a private detective. But this particular story is about Holly Gibney, who's kind of a co-worker of the main detective. And he actually mentions it in the afterword of just how when he created Holly, he thought she was going to be a little minor character and nothing really major, and Bill Hodges was his main guy. But as he developed her more and more, she became stronger and bigger and more interesting and complex, and now he's basically cares more about her than his main, narrator for the story. So this was kind of like another little sub-mystery where there's an explosion at a school, where they've caught the guy coming in with the bomb and everything happening on camera, and then she's trying to solve the mystery in her own way as the head of Finders Keepers now. But then it also ties into the idea of evil and as like a force that he actually talked about in, I don't remember what the other book was, not The Visit,
The Outsider.
The Outsider, there we go.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Which I didn't like that much. I don't know how you felt about that one, but...
It was all right, but yeah.
It felt, it was okay. It felt very contrived, that's what I thought. I thought it was too much pushing to get to what he was trying to say.
And so The Outsider was sort of a quasi-sequel to the Bill Hodges trilogy. I think Bill had died, and then it was Holly became the main character.
Spoiler alert, but if you haven't read them.
Yeah, right. And so this is sort of a continuation of that.
Yeah, of that, the idea that there's evil in the world and it takes over people and makes them do the things they do, and that you have to kind of stop. It's not just one person that you're trying to stop, but it's like this supernatural presence you have to fight. So it was kind of, it was, on some ways, if you're not sure about reading the whole trilogy, read this story to kind of get an idea and feel for it, and you'll get the rest of the series. Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot. I think I actually would be more happy reading more of her stories from her point of view in future, Yeah. And again, he puts a lot into, because he makes it a novella of the other characters that you get to meet in the books with, and then also with her mom and going through her issues and the whole family and stuff like that, which just, I think it's something obviously he's gone through in his life as an older person now, and it's just fun to have that be more filling of a story instead of just the main plot going on. Yeah. I really liked the first two stories quite a bit, and this one I didn't dislike, but I just felt it didn't need to be quite as long as it was. I felt like, he talks quite a bit about how much he enjoys that character, and so I know he's having a good time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I guess I just, wasn't having quite as good of a time reading it.
Well, I can't get them all right.
No, it was fine. And
I'm sure for all the huge Bill Hodges fans out there, they loved having this little story.
Sure, yeah. If you like the Bill Hodges, like the Bill Hodges trilogy, and if you liked Outsider, which is, I have not watched the HBO show, but that's been
that's right, yeah.
It's been hugely popular.
Has it? Okay.
Apparently people really like that.
It has his name on it, so that's not surprising.
Yeah, but even more than just like apparently it's done really well. But what else would I say about this one? Yeah, so this kind of fits into, there's like a whole like subgenre of this like psychic vampire thing, which again pulls
a little bit from Shining and Dr. Sleep, right?
Yeah, right. And there's like, I don't know, you could go on and on, but like Dan Simmons, there's the book Carrie and Comfort that comes to mind, where they're kind of vampires, but not really, and they're really just, feeding on human misery and things like that.
Have you watched What We Do in the Shadows at all?
I'm sorry, what's it called?
What We Do in the Shadows?
No, I have not.
Okay, they did a movie in like 2007. It's Taika Waititi and what's his name from Flight of the Conchords.
Oh, I did.
So they did a movie, and it's about basically these vampires who live in New Zealand and how they live. The movie is fantastic. And then they've done a TV series where they have other characters and it's set in New York. And it's fantastic. But one of the characters on that, Colin Robinson is his name. So he's a vampire, but he's not a blood vampire. He's like an energy, emotional vampire.
Yeah.
He just talks to people and bores them to death and then sucks out all their energy. So that makes me think of that as like a psychic vampire in that way,
Right. And then so Stephen King in this story, he has this psychic vampire be the, like a talking head on a 24-hour, cable news show, basically, or, a field reporter. And so kind of, making commentary on the culture we live in now that,
again, which fits into our current status quo.
Yeah. Right. So it was fine, but then it just kind of went on and, it's like, okay.
Well, I guess it kind of slowed you down a bit for that final kick in the final story, right? Did you like the last story?
I liked it. It wasn't, I didn't like it as much. So I liked the first two the best. And then, so I would say like, let me think. I think probably like I like the first the best, and then the second like a little bit less, but up there. And then the third came down a fair amount. And then the fourth one, Rat, I liked more than the third. A little bit more, but yeah. But not as much as the first. Wasn't that a nice, unfortunately that kind of.
So what you're saying is, we started at a high,
Yeah.
And it went down, but then it came back up again.
And then it's dangerous.
So it's like our infection curve at the virus.
I know. I was going to say that.
Everyone, we stayed at home. I went down, and then people started getting lazy and partying, and then it's going back up again.
Unfortunately,
everything comes back to COVID these days.
Yeah, but so this one does come up in a good way, like So
it's called Rat.
Yeah, it's called Rat, and so this is a story about a writer.
Which Stephen King has never done before.
Never done it. Yeah, I was amazed.
And at least done it 5 years.
Yeah, he hasn't done it for a little while.
That's true.
At one point, he was like doing it all the time, and then I think he said, "Okay, I'm never going to write about a writer again." But that was shortly after he said, "Oh, I'm going to retire."
Yeah. That's because they asked him while he was in the middle finishing the last 4 Dark Tower books, and they're like, "What are you going to write next?" And he's like, "I would never write another word again. I would kill myself."
Right. So that didn't happen. But anyway, so this one, he's a college professor. He's sort of like a frustrated writer. He wrote a short story that was well received in the past. I think it was
in the New Yorker. That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. And then he's just he's like a short story writer who doesn't really write short stories. He wrote one story, and he's always wanted to write the great American novel, and so he's married and has a kid, and he had tried to write a novel in the past, and things went dramatically south when he
started fine, and then things went bad, and
his whole
really bad.
Family life almost came apart just about. And
almost ended his marriage and stuff. Yeah,
right. Just got really bad, and so that it's kind of like hanging over him in the beginning of the story. You don't know exactly what went on. They have a family cabin. He comes up with this idea for a novel, and then he wants to go spend some time alone in the cabin. To dedicate to trying to give this a last shot, because this is sort of like his, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to.
I just need to do one in my life and say I did it, and that was it.
Right. So his wife's not wild about this idea because of how it went bad.
Previous experience.
Right. Mm-hmm. And but he's like I've got to do it, and so he makes a deal with her and says, okay, I'm going to try it for a week or whatever. He goes up to his cabin. And it's the winter season, and
in Maine,
right? And a storm is a coming in, like Storm of the Century and The Shining and many others. So occasionally he'll use weather.
But he knows the area. He knows it can't be that bad, but
it's not that bad. Yeah, right. And so anyway, he goes up to this cabin, and he's going to write this book. And then things start off fine, and then they get less fine and less fine. And then there ends up being a rat that shows up. And I'm not going to give away like a lot of plot points, but let's just say that he starts having conversations with the rat, and the rat sort of offers him a deal that he can't find, that he finds that he cannot really refuse.
Well, it's a choice, and he can choose one or the other. And
right. You can push the button, or so there are a lot of stories. That,
much like the Ursula Le Guin story, those who. I'm not sure what the full title is. Those who went away from Omelas, I think it's called, which is about a town where everyone is having an awesome time. Everyone's happy all the time. And there's one girl trapped in a closet or cellar somewhere who's suffering the whole time. And so basically with her suffering, everyone else gets to enjoy their lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a similar kind of idea.
Like portrait of Dorian Gray.
Dorian Gray. Yeah.
All those kind
and
of
as you said, monkey's paw kind of thing.
Monkey's
where you have
paw,
the choice. Your one little bad thing for a lot of enjoyment, but when that bad thing involves the suffering of others.
The Richard Matheson story, the button that he liked so much, right? Yeah. And so, definitely, I mean, that plays on, that's just like human morality. Like, do you live your life and enjoy your life when you know there's suffering in the world? Like what level do you balance? And so he has to make this decision. And he thinks it's going to go one way, but it ends up going another way. And it's a good story. It's not a great story. I think that he sets up the premise, and then it's one of those stories where he's talking about this book he's writing and how great it is. and he gives you just a couple details here and there, and it doesn't sound that great,
It's a Western, and
it's a Western, it's fine. Some Westerns are fine, but it just, I don't know. It's always like, I feel dangerous when you say, "Oh man, this is great story," and then you don't really say what the story is, and it's hard to buy into it. So it's kind of hard to suspend.
That's one of those things where, like, when you're doing it within a story, that you've got to be like, well, it can't be better than the story I'm actually telling, right? Because then you're just going to want that story and not the actual story I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
And which is hard to do anyway, to write a good story within it's not the story that you're telling and things. So, yeah.
Right. And so this, it's similar to a lot of, I'm trying to think, like, Secret Garden, Secret Window, whatever. Yeah, right. Whatever. Yeah, which was in another one of these.
The Dark Half.
The Dark Half, yes, exactly. So it's like these kind of, and The Shining, there's all these things about, writers who are trying to navigate the
beast within them.
yeah, for sure. Like,
tell the story.
I was going to say the hedge maze within their, mind or something, but that's from the movie. But, but yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, trying to follow the muse. He's trying to, without going crazy, without being, led into utter chaos.
The deep end and losing it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was good. It felt like it was kind of like by the numbers a little bit and a little bit rote. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't feel I had
surprised.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised, and it didn't really have the kind of like magic moments that the first two stories did. Like I feel like the first two, they just had this light touch, like this nice quality to the writing that just kept you going and going. And I mean, I'm a sucker for the spending a weekend in the woods. It's like
things aren't going to go well. Obviously,
yeah, right. But it just felt like there wasn't much else.
I mean, and the thing when we go back to what they were asking him, what's in your next stuff? I don't think I want to retire. Kind of. I remember one thing he said was he felt like he'd done all the stories that he felt he could do, and that any future stories he was going to do, he was just going to be retelling the same thing again.
Right.
And that's probably what this kind of felt like a bit.
I would say.
Things.
Right. I mean, to a degree, I feel like all four of the stories, like I think I said at the beginning, all four of the stories have something of that. Like we're it's kind of doing this and that and that. But the first two, for me, were successful because of the voice and the tone and just kind of the
characters and
the easiness of of how he told it. It just felt like, wow, he's just a naturally skilled storyteller, and that comes through in those first two stories, especially for me. The second one, he was clearly having a good time, and people who like those characters are going to enjoy it. I think. Yeah.
I mean, it kind of reading it this time as a writer who's done stories and novels and all this stuff. It's kind of like, well, one. I mean, the fact that he wrote that novel and then barely edited it and then it was done and ready to go, which was like, okay, novels don't get written that quick. They take years. He did it in like a few weeks and then 6 weeks after that, and it was all ready to go, sort of thing, and stuff. And,
right. Well, he did make the deal with the rats, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to write the story, but then it was like, okay, and then the book's coming out. It's like, no, it has to be like 2 years later, because then you got to suffer through all the editing and all that stuff and the drafts and it was almost like he was writing a perfect finished draft.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were really, if that was from the rat necessarily or just, but anyway, about a boring Western. Right. Then there was the bit where the cabin, which is on TR, whatever it was, 45 or whatever, which immediately made me think of, oh, you mean the place where he went for walks, Stephen King does, when he's doing writing, and then that's where he got hit by a car and almost died,
That's right. Yeah. And he used that in, what was it? I think it might have been Secret Window that had the TR, Yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's something he's used before, but I immediately just thought of, it's where you had your accident too. And so I think he was putting a lot of himself and possibly just showing, sometimes how tough it can be to wrestle with a story and want to get it out and get it just the way it is. And it's always the joke of you see with writing where, in your head, the story is perfect, but actually getting it on the page, it's a totally different animal,
Right, for sure. And I think through The Shining and a bunch of these other stories, there's kind of this sense of guilt that he himself will grapple with where he's, as a writer, he's kind of got to shut himself off in this room and ignore his kids and his family, all this stuff. And so there's sort of the violence, the things that happen to family members in some of his books. It's sort of, you could see that as guilt that he feels of being absent father in the sense of being there in the house.
I'd say, because I've done the same thing, I feel like, well, that's not that hard. And I always put family over writing sort of thing, But then also, I'm here and he's, the richest writer on the planet. Or one of those. So is it a worthy sacrifice sort of thing?
Yeah.
But I've never felt that it's the story when I've been working on books and stuff that they've taken over me to that degree. So that's why I think I was a little disconnected from this one because I didn't see it the same way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like, it was okay. And so it felt like it was a half really pretty good book and a half okay book.
And consider, the last few I hadn't been that enjoying. It was good to do this. Yeah. And I'm trying to think his son, Joe Hill, he did a 4 novella collection, I think, didn't he?
He did.
Last book or whatever. He did. So because it's like an unusual thing. I don't think. I don't really know of any other authors that do it. Do you? I know short story collections, obviously, but it's like I don't really know of that. Like I feel it's a thing that almost like did Stephen King invent that?
I know there are others. I'm blanking on it right now.
I haven't come across it. Anyway.
Right, and then and then there's some where like some people write like short stories and then kind of with a novella or
where there's one tapped on the end or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes that too. But I
know I've always kind of enjoyed. I mean, I look forward to these just as much as reading a regular novel, I find, because you're getting like 4 mini books in one, even over like short stories. Like the short stories are fine, but I enjoy the novels more, and then the novella collections just as much in some ways because they're always fun to see.
Right.
And then the first book I ever read of his was 4 Past Midnight. So The Langolier is his printed on my mind forever.
I think like it's funny that you mentioned The Langoliers because I loved that story. I thought it was a great story. And when I think back at his other collections of novellas, I feel they all follow this pattern where they start off really strong and then they get
so you had
Shawshank.
4 seasons.
Yeah, different seasons.
Different seasons that had. So did it start out with Shawshank or?
Yeah. So you start off. So
the full title, Rita Hayworth, and the Shawshank Redemption,
and the Shawshank Redemption. Right. So you start off with that, which is great, and then the second one is the body.
The body, right? Which they did Stand By Me off of the movie, which is another cool kids finding the first dead body. Yep.
Yeah. So 2 excellent stories, and then
I don't remember the other 2. What are the other 2? Do you remember? Is Apt Pupil in there?
It's Apt Pupil.
Okay, that one. Okay, which I felt like the movie was better because it had what's his name?
Brad Renfro and
but also Gandalf.
Right.
Playing the Nazi guy. And what was the fourth one? Do you remember?
It's pretty dark, that one. The fourth one's called The Breathing Method.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a weird pregnancy thing, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it kind of like ties into a story that was in Skeleton Crew.
Okay.
Yeah, there was this club in New York where people go and tell stories, and this was like, it is the tale, not he who tells it. It was like printed on the wall.
And then anyway, 4 Past Midnight, so you had the Langoliers.
Langoliers, I loved it. Excellent. Secret
Garden, Secret Window.
Yeah. It was all right. Yeah. And then,
the Library Policeman, was it?
The Library Policeman, which was
just fucking terrible.
It was weird. It was not as
it's like good. A pedophile library guy. Just weird and unnecessary.
Proboscis and stuff. I can't remember everything that happened, but it was.
I just remember preying on little kids, and it was just like, what is going on here? I'm not.
It was pretty weird.
And what was the fourth one?
Yeah, and then the fourth one was the Sundog.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
with the camera, the taking of photos and cameras. Okay, okay.
It was all right.
Again, up a little bit after the third one, which really drops down.
I feel it's kind of like the same,
progression.
And all of them. But I guess they can't all be winners, is what we're saying. But but it's pretty good. It's like I would recommend it over. Like if someone was going to say, what recent Stephen King book should I read? I'd say, give
this one a shot.
This one's pretty decent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the title or anything of that last 4 novella collection, which I want to look up now. But I do remember. Do you remember it, or are you good?
Was it called like Sunset or Sun? Like
that's right. After Sunset. Was that the short story collection? Was it the novella collection? Was it? Okay.
I could. Well, I don't know. I'm thinking it was the one where it was like a black cover. I mean, I could just Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. With like just words on it. like red words.
Yeah. What I remember about it was one of the stories was just about a woman being chased by some weird madman or whatever, and just that was just like, oh, you're just getting off here on putting a woman in an intense situation and preying on her. And it's like, I'm getting the opposite of this, and I just gave up on the story,
Yeah. Was that the one with the roadside?
I think so.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Just After Sunset. There we go.
Just After Sunset.
All right. Just pull up the stories real quick. I'm trying to remember them.
Which sounds like a Richard Linklater movie.
So that was Willa. No, I don't remember. No, this is a short story collection, so it's not that one. Okay. Okay. So, what was your first Stephen King book?
My first Stephen King story or book was Pet Sematary.
Damn.
Yeah. I was 11. So
Jesus.
So this was like 1984. No, it was 1984. It had just come out in paperback not too long before that. And I saw it in the grocery store and saw the cat in the eyes, and I was like, oh my God, I have to have that, read that. And I felt, so I was 11, and it was like, okay, I have to ask my mom if I can get it. And I just felt like it was like I wanted it, but it was somehow it was wrong, and I shouldn't want it. And so I kind of felt like it was like asking, for like a Playboy or something. I was like, I want that, and so, okay, that's fine.
I just remember the 80s movie and being freaked out by the movie. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yep. But so I remember reading it and then finishing it on my 12th birthday, and then only read Stephen King for like 2 years after that.
So it is called Full Dark, No Stars. There was this theme with the going away sun.
It was something dark.
It's kind of similar stuff. Yeah. And then the 4 stories are 1922, Big Driver, Fair Extension, and A Good Marriage. And I remember nothing about those really. I know they did movies off of those, right? 1922.
Yeah, 1922 and A Good Marriage. Yeah.
And I think Big Drive was. Anyway, I don't remember much about that. So
is that the one with his son? No, that was Full Throttle.
Yeah. Which is off the Richard Matheson story. Yeah, that was fun.
That's right.
Where they're on their bikes.
Yeah. But yeah.
All right. Well, any final thoughts? Anything we haven't touched on? If It Bleeds. Good title.
Yeah, and pretty good book, I would say. Not bad.
Interesting they didn't use blood on the cover. They could have very easily with that title, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I can't remember the cat. I do remember the rat.
There is no cat. That's why.
I guess not. Yeah.
It's one of those things where, I think even when you're Stephen King, you still don't have as much control over covers as you think, and it's always decided by the publisher. Well, we did this marketing, and we know that this is going to work better,
Right. Yeah.
I guess an iPhone 1 would have been kind of cheesy. and it might have called back to Cell. Terrible zombie book he did about cell phones.
That's right. Yeah.
Must not be named.
Right. Yeah. But it was pretty good, and I've been meaning to watch The Outsider. I don't have HBO, but
maybe we'll do a follow-up book banter and talk more about Stephen King stuff in general.
Sure,
and we can talk about that too.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, cool.
That sounds fun. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I enjoyed getting to chat with you about this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. We'll have you on again, and
absolutely.
Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you for listening to Book Banter. This episode was performed and recorded by me, Alex C. Telander, and featured my guest, Chris Fletcher, with help from Hale and Well Met Podcasts. The music featured in this episode is the String Quartet No. 15 in A minor, composed by Ludwig van Beethoven. The theme song is from Fantasia on a Theme by Thomas Tallis, composed by Ralph Vaughan Williams, all courtesy of Musopen. Find out more at musopen.org. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, you could do so by buying me a coffee at ko-fi.com/AlexCTelander. You can also reach me at alexctelander@gmail.com with any comments, questions, or suggestions, or just have a chat. Or you can find me on Twitter under the username @Bookbanter. Until next time, thanks for listening.